Market to Market is everywhere you are. Subscribe to Market on YouTube, find us on the PBS video app to stream on demand, and add our 3 podcasts on your favorite podcasting app.
While the political year opened with the chaos of an insurrection and attempted coup, the COVID-19 pandemic cast a long shadow over the nation's politics and economy.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
On January 20th, former Vice President Joe Biden of Delaware was sworn in as the 46th President of the United States. One of his first executive orders withdrew the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline, which would have added capacity to pipelines delivering Canadian and U.S. crude to distribution points in the Gulf of Mexico. Environmental groups had argued that the pipeline crossed environmentally sensitive areas and wasn't needed in a petroleum market that has struggled with overproduction. President Biden also issued orders ending new construction of the Mexican border wall, a focal point of the Trump administration. The rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine, which began in December of 2020, accelerated in the spring of 2021. But vaccinations quickly became political. Just over 60% of Americans have received 2 doses of a vaccine. An economy that rapidly slowed when the pandemic struck in 2020 reopened in fits and starts. Workers whose jobs disappeared in 2020 were cautious to return to the workforce for both economic and medical reasons. Employers struggled to coerce staff back into the labor market and resorted to raising wages to fill jobs. Companies that saw revenues and profits drop in 2020 reported record earnings in 2021 as pent-up demand fueled strong sales. The high demand for everything from cars to cuts of beef drove inflation to levels unseen in 40 years. The cost of housing, used cars, and fuel led the spike. Oil prices doubled from pandemic lows, but without the production and shipping problems that plagued the rest of the economy.
When the Big Four can have all of that captive supply so they do not have to go out and compete for those cattle, then they can push down the prices.
Meat packers saw record profits in 2021 as their margins have risen 50% and net profits 300% since the beginning of the pandemic. Tyson saw record profits in 2021 despite shipping fewer pounds of meat compared to 2020. Live cattle prices are up roughly 10% since the beginning of the pandemic.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Secretary.
Tom Vilsack returned to the USDA as Secretary of Agriculture. Vilsack, who served 8 years under President Obama, targeted the meat industry during his confirmation hearing.
I think we need alternative processing opportunities. Why? Not just from the competitive standpoint, but also from a resilience standpoint. We found that when 1 or 2 processing facilities shut down during COVID, that it created havoc in the market. We can't have that.
Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa introduced a bill in May to mandate that beef slaughterhouses purchase half of their animals on the cash market. According to cattle market researchers, slaughterhouses currently purchase less than 30% of their cattle supply on the cash market and are approaching cash purchase rates seen in the poultry and pork markets. This is the 11th time Senator Grassley has proposed this bill during his tenure. In September, the USDA created a $500 million pool to start and expand small meat packers in the U.S. The assumption is that more smaller slaughterhouses would lessen the pricing power of the 4 largest meat processors. The meatpacking industry opposes government involvement in their market. Moving food and goods from the factory to the retailer was also a struggle in 2021.
I believe our economist looks at the number of 80,000 short after the pandemic.
A shortage of truck drivers was often cited as one reason for supply shortages that spiked the cost of goods. Federal trucking rules were loosened during 2020 to facilitate more efficient movement of truck traffic, and the industry hopes those rules can remain more liberal. But while recruiting the next generation of drivers to the industry is a challenge, the shortage cited by the industry is only a 2% gap. A crush of goods trying to enter U.S. ports has been another pinch point in the economy. The complex dance between ships, ports, trucks, and railroads, has struggled to keep up with the increased volumes. International shipping companies reported the highest profits in a decade as rates to ship goods from Asia to the rest of the world skyrocketed. The weather was very different across the country. The east and southeast saw above average moisture as 8 tropical storms and hurricanes made landfall. $70 billion of damage made 2021 the 4th most expensive hurricane season on record. The western 2/3 of the country saw below average rainfall. Another winter with under-average snowfall left western rivers and reservoirs with low water levels. Grazing in the west became more difficult, while many ranchers reduced their herds as pasture quality declined. The long-term forecast holds difficult decisions for cattlemen. Drought conditions drove massive fires in the west throughout the year. 7.8 million acres burned in the United States, which is 5% above the 10-year average. Despite dry conditions through much of the corn and bean belt, the grain harvest was large. Both corn and soybeans delivered the second largest crops on record. The huge crops were met by high global demand, which supported high grain prices and strong local basis. Yet net farm profits were expected to decline compared to 2020 as multiple years of high government payments to commodity growers grew to a close. For Market to Market, I'm Peter Tubbs.